I live on a quiet patch of farmland tucked behind a sleepy little town where people usually mind their own business. It's peaceful, just the way I like it. My family has owned this land for generations, and we've always respected our neighbors' boundaries. That's why it rubbed me the wrong way when the two new sisters who moved in next door started treating my property like their personal sidewalk. The first time I saw them, they were cutting straight through my cornfield in broad daylight. Tall, blonde, and dripping with entitlement, they walked like they owned the place, holding their little dogs on glittery leashes and sipping iced lattes. I waved politely and assumed maybe they were just lost. But nope, the very next day, same thing. This time, they even had the nerve to wave at me like I was some kind of welcoming committee. I walked up to them and said, "Hey, just a heads up. This is private property. There's a road you can use just around the bend. It's only a 2-minute walk longer." The taller one, who clearly thought she was the spokesperson, looked at me with a pout and said, "Oh my God, relax. It's not like we're hurting anything." The shorter one snorted, "You're seriously gatekeeping dirt." I told them again, firmly but calmly, that they couldn't just traipse across my land whenever they felt like it. They both rolled their eyes like teenagers being asked to take out the trash. The taller one muttered something about boomers and boundaries as they walked off. I thought maybe they got the message, but nope. That weekend, I found fresh sneaker prints across my freshly tilled soil. I hadn't even planted yet, and already they were causing damage. I left a polite sign near the edge of the property, "Private property. Please respect the land." I even zip-tied it to a wooden post so it wouldn't blow away. Next day, gone. Post yanked out, sign nowhere to be found. I found glittery leash wrappers and half a latte cup near the same path they kept using. The disrespect was almost impressive. I tried calling the HOA, but they brushed it off. "We don't manage land disputes," they said. "Talk to the homeowners directly." I'd already done that, so I installed a game camera, not to catch animals, but Karens in their natural habitat. Sure enough, the footage showed them laughing, skipping, and taking selfies in my field like it was a theme park. They even did some kind of weird TikTok dance in front of my barn. That was the last straw. I don't go looking for trouble, but I'm not about to let two entitled brats tear through my farm like they're influencers in a sunflower patch. If they wanted to treat my land like a shortcut, they were about to learn that every path has its price. And I had just the plan to make sure their little adventures ended exactly where they began, at their shiny new car. After watching those sisters stomp all over my farm on camera like they were filming a reality show, I decided enough was enough. They weren't just being rude, they were flaunting their disrespect like it was fashionable. And if a sign and a warning couldn't stop them, maybe a little strategy would. I started small. I dug a shallow trench right along the path they kept using. Not dangerous, just enough to give them a bit of a surprise if they weren't watching where they walked. I lined it with soft mulch to keep it from looking too obvious, like nature had just worn it down over time. Sure enough, the next morning, I heard the sound of stumbling and one very loud, very dramatic, "Oh my God, what the hell," followed by a clattering thud and a yapping dog. I couldn't help but smirk as I watched from the edge of my barn. The taller one had tripped, her designer yoga pants covered in dirt, and her drink had exploded all over her tote bag. But instead of taking the hint, they doubled down. That night, they posted a video on my land, mocking the trench, calling it Farmer Krusty's Obstacle Course. They got likes, comments, even a few people egging them on. "You go, girls. Don't let him gatekeep your shortcut." Gatekeep? It's my property, not a public park. So that's when I turned to something more permanent. I knew exactly where they parked their precious Audi, right up along the back fence, just a few feet from the trail that led straight through my cornfield. It wasn't on my land, but just barely. Close enough that I had an idea. See, there's a rule about boundaries out here: if you encroach even a few inches, you better be ready to deal with the consequences. So, I took a weekend and decided to make their shortcut a real dead end. I borrowed a few rusty old hay bales, the kind with wire inside, and stacked them strategically along the back trail. Then, I hauled out my grandfather's old plow and dug a trench, deeper this time, right in front of the trail's exit point by the fence. Next to it, I planted a few "No Trespassing" signs for good measure. But the kicker? I waited until midnight and quietly rolled a massive chunk of reclaimed iron fencing into place, right behind where they always parked. Not touching their car, of course, not yet, but just close enough that reversing out would be a challenge, especially once I added a few well-placed logs behind the wheels. Morning came, and the scream started. The taller one banged on my barn door like it was a crime scene. "Are you insane? We can't get our car out." "Oh," I said, stepping outside with my coffee. "Thought this was just dirt and gatekeeping." She was fuming. "You blocked us in." "No," I said calmly. "You parked so close to my property that nature got creative." They had no idea how to respond, and I wasn't done. The sisters stood there, arms crossed, seething in their designer boots like they'd just been personally victimized by Mother Nature. The taller one, let's call her Karen Prime, stormed up to the iron fencing, kicked it like that would magically move 300 pounds of rusted steel, and then whipped out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she shrieked. "Be my guest," I said, sipping my coffee. "Just make sure you let them know you've been trespassing on private farmland for the past 3 weeks. I've got the footage, high definition." She paused, phone halfway to her ear. That got her thinking. The other one, Mini Karen, tried a different tactic. She softened her voice like she was on some customer service call. "Listen, sir, we didn't mean any harm. We just wanted a quicker route to the walking path." "Funny," I said. "Because the quicker route destroyed 2 rows of sprouting crops and left a trail of trash like a festival came through. I warned you twice." They turned and huffed back to their car, now boxed in by my handmade barricade of logs and fencing. I watched them argue and flail like 2 toddlers who'd been denied screen time. Then, just as I was heading back inside, I heard it, the sound of an engine revving. Karen Prime had climbed into the Audi and was trying to ram her way out. She backed up a few inches, accelerated forward, and, clunk. The bottom of her car scraped against a buried piece of old iron rebar I'd forgotten was even there. It didn't puncture anything, but it made a sound like metal screaming. She slammed the brakes, jumped out, and started inspecting the undercarriage like I'd just sabotaged her. "You're going to pay for this," she yelled. "This is destruction of property, sweetheart," I said, folding my arms. "This is a result of poor decision-making and a failure to read signs. You're lucky I didn't press charges for trespassing." Just then, a deputy pulled up. Someone had called the police. I explained everything, showed the deputy the footage on my phone, the signs, the damaged crops, the trench, the car. He scratched his head, looked at the sisters, and said, "Y'all know this is his land, right?" Karen Prime tried pleading, but the deputy shut it down. "He's within his rights," the deputy said. "And frankly, you're lucky he didn't put up a real fence with a lock. That car. It ain't on his land, but you wedged it so tight against his boundary, it's almost impressive." They looked like they'd swallowed a lemon. The deputy warned them, "Any more trespassing, and you will be cited. This isn't a playground. It's farmland." I nodded and thanked him as he drove off. The sisters stood silently beside their now scuffed luxury SUV, unsure what to do next. I walked back to my barn, smiling. You'd think they'd finally give up. But no, Karens don't retreat, they escalate. I thought maybe, just maybe, after the visit from the deputy, the Karen sisters would finally knock it off. I even gave it a week. No sign of them, no footprints, no TikToks, just peace. But Karens don't take no for an answer. They take it as a challenge. On the 8th day, I woke up to the sound of an engine and voices on my land. I threw on my boots and stormed out of the house to find the sisters, and this time they brought a lawn care guy with a weed whacker and a small riding mower. I blinked. What in the name of common sense is this? Karen Prime grinned, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. We're doing a little community beautification, she chirped. We figured if you're going to leave this trail here, we might as well keep it neat. You hired someone to mow my land? I asked, stunned. Minnie Karen stepped forward, filming the whole thing on her phone. Say hi to TikTok. We're showing everyone how to reclaim public space. #equality. That's when I noticed what they were really doing. They weren't mowing, they were carving out a clean path through my property, as if formalizing their little shortcut, making it look like a legitimate public walkway. I walked right up to the guy with the mower and told him calmly, "This is private land. You're trespassing." He immediately shut off the engine. They said they owned it. Nope, they don't. And if you don't leave in 30 seconds, I'll call the sheriff again. He apologized, packed up, and hightailed it out. The sisters started whining, calling me hostile and aggressive. Aggressive? I hadn't even started yet. I decided that if they wanted to play dirty, I could go one better. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten. I just needed a welder. That night, I got to work on something special, a custom-made gate with welded hinges and a heavy-duty chain. I didn't put it on the property line. I put it inside my own fence, covering the trail they kept using. It wasn't just a physical barrier, it was a message: this trail is closed for good. Then I added trail cams, hidden ones, and a little motion-activated floodlight, just for good measure. Sure enough, the next evening, I caught them on camera again. This time, they were arguing in front of the new gate, shaking it like it was some personal offense to their dignity. Karen Prime screamed into the void, "This is harassment. He's bullying us." Minnie Karen kicked a stone and muttered, "We should sue him." That was when I realized the full extent of their entitlement. They really believed they were the victims here. So, I made one final call to the town zoning board. I submitted all the footage, the damage, the incidents. Turns out, the town had just passed a stricter rural property protection ordinance, and the board agreed. They issued a cease and desist order against the Karens. The cease and desist order arrived on a crisp Monday morning, delivered by a town official who looked half amused and half annoyed. "You really stirred up a hornet's nest," he said with a smirk as he handed me the paperwork. "Just protecting my land," I replied. The order was ironclad: the sisters were prohibited from stepping onto or altering my property in any way. Any future incidents would result in fines and potential legal action. The town zoning board, backed by the footage and incident reports I'd submitted, had drawn a firm line in the dirt, and the Karens were on the wrong side of it. I could have just sat back and let that be the end of it. But I had one last card to play. The sisters still hadn't seen the new signage I just posted, laminated and mounted on steel stakes, one at each end of the trail. In bold red letters, "Private property. Trespassing will be prosecuted. Violators identified on camera." And underneath, a QR code, one that led to a compilation of every single video I'd taken of them trespassing, posted on a website titled Karen Trail, Unauthorized Edition. Petty? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. That same afternoon, I sat on my porch sipping iced tea when I heard the unmistakable whine of Karen Prime's voice echoing across the field. "Oh my God, is that a website?" she shrieked. I couldn't help but grin. They stomped up to the edge of the fence, furious, but careful not to cross the line now that the heat was on them. "You need to take that down," Minnie Karen barked. "That's invasion of privacy." "On my property," I replied. "You were the ones filming me for TikTok. Don't dish it if you can't take it." They blustered and threatened legal action, but it was all bark now, no more bite. The moment the zoning board got involved, their influence crumbled. No one in the town was on their side, not the HOA, not the sheriff, and certainly not the neighbors who'd quietly watched the chaos unfold like a live soap opera. Then came the final twist. Turns out, their trespassing wasn't limited to me. Another neighbor a few lots down, an older woman with a greenhouse, had also filed a complaint. Apparently, the Karens had been cutting through her land, too. But unlike me, she had sprinklers with motion sensors. I watched from the porch as the sisters were soaked mid-rant by a surprise sprinkler ambush, screaming, slipping, drenched designer shoes and all. Poetic justice. Within a week, their Audi was gone. The trail was quiet. No more trash, no more drama. I heard through the grapevine they'd moved to a rental across town, someplace closer to a sidewalk and farther from fences. And as for me, I added a new sign to the trailhead, one that simply reads, "The Karens tried. The fence won." I don't like conflict, but I love my land. And if you think you can treat it like your own without consequence, well, just make sure your car's got good clearance. And your ego can handle the mud. If watching entitled Karens get trapped by their own shortcut made your day, go ahead and like this video. It tells the algorithm that justice still matters. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life drama, petty payback, and fences stronger than egos, because out here, we don't start trouble, but we sure know how to finish it.